We assume we know what they want, but we don't because we don't ask them. Sometimes we're too busy worrying about the non-chargeable work that we don't even have the conversation well enough with them at the beginning. We've got to ask lots of questions about them, about their families, about their business, about their exit strategies, about what are they trying to achieve. And, a great question is, look, take money off the table. How would you want to work with your lawyer? What is the dream service you would like to have? And, we might think it's X, Y, Z, and they might say, no, it's A, B, C. That's what I want. And you think, all right, okay. Didn't think of that. But yeah, if that's what you want. And then we've got to say, well, everybody's different. Every consumer is different.
Welcome to the Renegade Lawyer podcast, the show where we ask the questions, why aren't more lawyers living flourishing lives and inspiring others? And can you really get wealthy while doing only the work you love with people you like? Many lawyers are. Get ready to hear from your host, Ben Glass, the founder of the law firm Ben Glass Law in Fairfax, Virginia, and Great Legal Marketing, an organization that helps good people succeed by coaching, inspiring, and supporting law firm owners. Join us for today's conversation.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Ben Glass. This is the Renegade Lawyer podcast, where I get to interview in every episode someone inside or outside of legal who's making a ding in the world. And today we're going international. I've got Sean Jardine on the podcast today. Sean is the managing director of a company called Big Yellow Penguin, and he's going to tell us how he got to that. But more importantly, he's the author of a just released book called Ditch the Billable Hour. Before we went live, I was telling Sean, it was probably even 15 years or 20 years ago that I wrote an article that for an American journal that said the billable hour for lawyers is the dumbest model ever. And why are we still doing that? And then here he is, Ditch the Billable Hour. Here's the guy from Great Britain. And as someone who's singing the song of my soul, look, in most of my practice, almost all my practice is a contingent fee. So we don't charge clients by the hour, but a lot of our members do, Sean. And so it's great to have you on the podcast today. I've looked at the book. It's just released and it's available at Amazon. I actually found out, because I have a book for teenage soccer referees, and I found out I was on a podcast by some guys in England, right? And I'm like, we're getting all these sales from England, even though I don't know how the book gets to Amazon in England. Then I find out it's print on demand in England, and boom, I have new fans. But anyway, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on
Well,
today.
thank you very much, Ben. I'm delighted to be here. And I also, in my youth, I'm no longer a qualified soccer referee, but that's something else we got in common in addition to our dislike of the billable hour.
They need you. I've seen a couple of videos. I see videos almost every day of bad stuff happening on football fields, pitches, and there's a bunch that have come out now out of Great Britain. I think a referee got chased off the field by some spectators just in the last week. But that's for a different podcast. Look, as I said, a lot of our members do bill by the hour. I've long advocated against it. We're going to talk about that. But give us a little bit of your background, and you got to include like the Big Yellow Penguin part. But where have you come from?
Okay, well, I qualified as a lawyer in 1986. I was a litigation lawyer. I set up my own law firm. I then merged with another law firm. I became CEO of that. I was elected CEO for a 3-year term, which lasted 4 years, 9 months, 11 days. Not that I was counting or anything. And that business had 247 people in it, operated in 3 offices in rural England. And I got into value-based pricing in 2017 when I went to Allen in Texas to a conference organized by a pricing guru called Ron Baker. Got there and there were lawyers from all over the world, Canada, America, New Zealand, Australia. I was the only Brit. In a room full of Americans, and we had to.
In Texas.
We had to do a presentation at that event, and I dressed up as a penguin, as I do from time to time. And I was waving John Cotter from Harvard Business School, his book, Our Iceberg is Melting, which is a book that I'd use for a change management project. And it's perfect for lawyers because you can read it in an hour and a quarter. It's got pictures of penguins in it. It's large print. and it's got characters that you can relate to in a law firm. So it's got a penguin called Alice, and she's the one who gets stuff done. There's a penguin called the Professor who knows lots of stuff, but kind of can't necessarily apply it in real life. There's a penguin called No. Oh, no, that won't get done round here. So it was a great book. I used it for the change management project, has 8 very easy steps to follow. And when it came to writing my book, I have unashamedly ripped off John Cotter and said, I'm using the same 8 steps. I mentioned Cotter's methodology. And then what I did was design 8 steps to implementing value-based pricing in a law firm.
But prior to the conference that you went to in Texas, were you thinking along these lines of value-based versus hourly, or was that your introduction to, oh my gosh, there's a different way of doing this?
My introduction was via another North American, actually, a Canadian called Mitch Kowalski. And Mitch Kowalski wrote a book called Avoiding Extinction, Reimagining Legal Services in the 21st Century, which was a pithy novel about if lawyers used all the available tech that was then available properly in their business, what would a law firm look like? And in that, he mentioned a law firm called Valorum, who were doing alternative fee agreements and things like that, a guy called Patrick Lamb. And so I thought, okay, I'll look at this guy's website. Oh, look, he's doing this. It's a bit different. And I got in touch with Mitch. Mitch was over in the UK. I went and saw Mitch. I'm a great believer in, reading books, because that's where the knowledge is, and looking to apply it, because I don't think, there's nothing new about running law firms. We just actually have to apply the same principles that are used elsewhere in the wider world. There's nothing unique about law. And that was the book that really started me on this journey. But when I got out to Allen in Texas, then I met lawyers who were already doing it, having better lives, making more money. Their staff were happier. They were not living their life in 6-minute units. And I just thought, I've got to have some of this. Came back to the UK and then read as much as I could, spoke to as many people across the world as I could, and then I implemented it at my firm with a pilot project. And that was my swan song. But then once that pilot project had been rolled out and was successful, I then retired from private practice and then thought, I know I can set this business up and do consulting on a subject that I'm very passionate about, because I want to help make lawyers' lives a little bit easier.
When you came back and implemented it as a project at your law firm, what is the problem that you were solving for? Was it simple? Because you mentioned happiness and living a great life, which is a big part of what I talk about. But was there a specific problem that the law firm, or you were helping the law firm solve for?
It wasn't a specific problem, because the firm was, profitable, doing well, etc. But the principles of value-based pricing, are you don't have to do every bit of work that comes through the front door. You have to do more than your fair share of the good stuff. You actually don't assume every customer is the same, every client is the same, because they're not. Sometimes clients are not a good fit, and we need to be able to be prepared to turn that work away. And I do surveys with law firms, and one of the questions I ask when I survey the staff anonymously and get their data is, do you work for a firm who make you act for clients that are too difficult to deal with and unprofitable? The answers I get range from 55% to 96% in one firm. 96% of their staff thought they were working for people who are just difficult. Who wants to do that? Let's empower our people to raise their hands and say, this person's not a right fit for us. Let's devote our energies elsewhere.
Exactly. I've always thought that if you can solve for 2 things, one is the owner's happiness. Like, as an owner of a solo or small firm in America in particular, like, are you doing work that you like doing that really energizes you? And then are you doing it with people you like? And that's a whole complex thing about getting the right people in, but then they have to be energized, Sean, by coming to work, right? We're recording this on a Monday, and a lot of people probably around the world goes, oh, it's Monday, I have to go back to work. My question to law firm owners would be, do you have people that are looking forward to Monday? Because if you solve for number one, which is the owners are happy and doing work they like to do, and you solve for number two, you've got a team that you'll like working with and they like being there, then the client will be well served, right? Because it's almost impossible then to screw that up. And for so long, the profession has put the client as number one and made the lawyer and the team the sacrificial lambs of the client. And we say, why do we do that? That's just crazy. So in changing a billing model, right, what are the things you think that are just, if we were building the profession over again and say, let's do this by the billable hour, like, would we even build it that way?
No, you wouldn't. But what we do, if we were starting again, we say, look, the strategic objective has got to be that we're not going to bill by time. We're not going to do that. We are going to have conversations with our clients, detailed conversations at the outset, work out what it is they want to achieve, because what we as lawyers think they want to achieve sometimes isn't what they want to achieve. We assume we know what they want, but we don't, because we don't ask them. Sometimes we're too busy worrying about the non-chargeable work that we don't even have the conversation well enough with them at the beginning. We've got to ask lots of questions about them, about their families, about their business, about their exit strategies, about what are they trying to achieve. And, you know, a great question is, look, take money off the table. How would you want to work with your lawyer? What is the dream service you would like to have? And, you know, we might think it's X, Y, Z, and they might say, no, it's A, B, C. That's what I want. And you think, all right, okay, didn't think of that, but yeah, if that's what you want. And then we've got to say, well, you know, everybody's different. Every consumer is different. Everybody does not want the cheapest. If that was so, we'd always order the cheapest wine when we went out for dinner. We'd all be driving Korean cars and we'd all be shopping at Walmart or something like that for our clothes. We don't do that, because value is complicated. Value is different. And what you value and what I value will be different. And we will then present to clients 3 choices. Just a bit like going to the car wash. You've got your car wash menu. Which one am I going to have? Well, let's create 3 choices for a client. And I did this with an employment lawyer that I was working with. And one of the rules of value-based pricing is no one prices their work in isolation. 2 pairs of eyes on every price. And with this particular employment lawyer, he had a client who wanted employment contracts, commercial contracts for his staff. And we gave them 3 options. First option is, I will send you some templates with some guidance notes. You fill them out yourself. I'll check your homework. That's £2,000. I will do it for you in 3 weeks' time. £5,000. I will drop everything and do it for you tomorrow. £8,000. The client chose the £8,000 option. They knew they could get it cheaper because we told them. But for them, having it done the next day was strategically very important to them, and they were prepared to pay for it. Now you then think, was the lawyer happy? Yes, I'm going to do half my monthly target tomorrow. Happy days. Is the client happy? Yes, I'm getting my work tomorrow when I was thinking I might have to wait 3 weeks' time. And are the owners of the business happy? Of course they're happy. We've made more money on that job than we would have done had we done it on the hourly rate. And the thing about value-based pricing is, well, for the billable hour, we need calculators. For value-based pricing, we need courage. And you will never get that pump fist price where you go, yes, I've got that. You never get that unless you ask for it. And that's what I encourage lawyers to do, because we've got low self-esteem and low confidence.
It's yes. And that's an amazing statement to make, that we lawyers have low self-esteem and low self-confidence. But I think you're exactly right. Many lawyers are so fearful of quoting fees or quoting alternative fee choices, as you just put it. I would think that one of the scariest things in the world, if you're a client, is to ask, how much is this going to cost? And the lawyer goes, I don't know. It's going to depend on how many hours it takes. And oh my gosh, like we don't buy anything else in the world in our lives on, I'm not really sure what the final price is going to be. Like even like a heart surgeon tells you what the price, can tell you what the price is going to be for that. And that's just scary. Now, on the other side of that coin is lawyers who, I'm sure you've heard the objections too, as I do, is like, well, I don't really know. Like in part, this, if it's litigation, if it's family law, divorce law, in part, we have to see how is the your wife or your husband, are they mad about this deal? Is there a lawyer, someone who's agreeable or who's obnoxious? Like these may prolong the number of hours we have to work. So when you hear that type of objection, just say from a family lawyer, because they're probably the ones that are most entrenched, I think, in this hourly billing model, except for our friend Marco Brown that we talked about before we went live. How do you assuage their souls, Sean?
Okay, I get asked this all the time. First of all, we're going to grab ourselves a little pebble and we're going to drop that pebble into a pond. And then we're going to see all these concentric circles go out. At the very center of that splash where the pebble went in is what I call yes work. So if a client comes into a litigator, I was a litigator, and says, Sean, I've got a problem with I used to do a lot of property boundary disputes, okay? I've got a problem with my neighbor over the boundary. I want you to write a letter to them. That's yes work. Can I write a letter and give a fixed price for doing that? Before I, spend hours and hours with the client, can I give the client a fixed price based on what I know and my experience as a lawyer? Yes, I can. That's yes work. The next concentric circle is likely work. What is likely to happen? So even if it's starting a divorce proceedings, what is likely to happen when you send that letter or you have that first communication? Well, usually it's one of three things. You won't hear anything because you get ignored. The defendant might ring you up and be vitriolic and shout at you themselves or write a horrible letter. That's the second one. Or the third one is they'll instruct their own lawyer who will ring you up and shout at you and write a vitriolic letter. Those are So can I price for that likely work? Yeah, I can, because I'm an experienced lawyer and I can give a client a fixed price for those two stages. When we get further out, we're into I'm not sure, and then further out after that is who the hell knows? Well, I will say to a client on day one, and I talk about the pebble all the time, this is a situation. I can give you a fixed price for stages 1 and 2. When we get to stage 3, we'll have a better idea what's going on, and I'll give you a fixed price then. But we don't know what's going to happen at stage 3. But what I can tell you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, is you will never get a bill from me that you've not previously authorized, because I will give you a price. And then I will scope out the work when we get to these individual stages, because I'm an expert. And it is only law where all of a sudden we hold ourselves out as experts, but we can't give them a price.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, but if we said to, and I've never had a lawyer, if we say to any lawyer, okay, if you were having an extension built at your home, 2 up, 2 down extension, would you employ a building contractor and all the subcontractors, would you employ them on a day rate? And you get looks of horror from lawyers saying, no, of course I wouldn't, Sean. And then they say, well, why do we expect our clients to do exactly the same? Because that's what we do with the hourly rate. And over here in the UK, a number of years ago, the courts issued a practice direction, the rules which we have to abide by. And it was, you have to put in a cost budget for the whole trial within usually about 4 to 6 weeks after an action has been started. You've got to cost it out. And everyone up until then saying, you can't do it, you can't do it. Once the courts made a rule that you had to do it, guess what? They found a way. And that's exactly what you can do, because we don't naturally want to do it. We're wedded to this billable hour because that's how it's always been. But if somebody said to you, you cannot bill by the hour anymore, you'd find a way around it. And if there's one reason to find a way around it at the moment, it's generative AI and how that's going to impact the legal profession, because we know it already has, and it's only just got started, in my view.
Yes. Hey guys, this is Ben. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, not just the marketing and practice building strategies, but the philosophy of the art of living your best life parts, you should know that my son Brian and I have built a tribe of like-minded lawyers who are living lives of their own design and creating tremendous value for the world within the structure of a law practice. We invite you to join us at the only membership organization for entrepreneurial lawyers that is run by 2 full-time practicing attorneys. Check us out at greatlegalmarketing.com. I'm going to come back to generative AI in just a second. Talk to me, or really talk to our listeners who are trying to figure out, okay, Sean, this makes sense. Yes, less scary for the client, and I know what I'm going to get paid. And you said, I think we have low self-esteem. So what tips would you have for the thinking or the mental process of thinking about the pricing for various stages of an engagement?
Okay.
Because lawyers, they should be interested in profit margins and actually making money for their work and things like that. If you watch many of them, it doesn't seem like they actually are. But there is a mindset, I am sure, to trying to get the pricing right. So walk us through some tips for that.
Okay. First of all, we got to know what our base costs are. What are the costs of us actually doing this work? And in many law firms, the data's rubbish already because our lawyers don't put it in right. They might actually work or have a line manager who, if you come to them with a write-off, will give the lawyer a very hard time for writing off time. So actually they don't bill it, they don't book it at all, and it just looks on their timesheets that they don't do any work, that they do come in and do 2 hours work a day when in fact they're there for 12 hours. So we've got to understand what our base costs are. Then what we want to do, in the same way that we have gold car wash menus, what are all of the features that we can put into any service? And I'm a great fan of what's called possibility thinking, where you turn the problem into a question that says, how can we possibly solve this? So I did this with a lawyer who had worked for a big global magic circle firm. She'd gone out on her own, and she did software as a service contracts. Mind-numbingly boring. Apologies to any one of your listeners who may actually do that as a living, but these technical contracts for software, quite boring. And I said, okay, what we're going to do in 3 minutes time, we put a timer on the clock and say, what are all the features we could possibly add to this contract drafting? And we went, bum, right, writing lots of answers. We then, after the end of 3 minutes, had 15 or so features. And they included things like, okay, I will draft a contract for you. You will have a contract. That contract I will update every year for you. So every year, or if there's a change in the law, you know it's up to date. I will come to your organization and sit down with all your salesmen and tell them how this contract works and why they shouldn't be deleting bits of it. I will come when you sign up a client, or you've got a client ready to sign, I will check that contract for you to make sure it's right. If you've got a very prestigious client, I will come to the meeting for you with that. So you see where I'm going here. We're adding lots of features to what is otherwise a boring bit of paper. And when I did this exercise with this lawyer, she held her heads in her hands. She said, Sean, I needed you yesterday. I said, why? What happened yesterday? She said, I agreed to do a piece of work for £2,000, which is giving this guy the contract, giving a client a contract. I said, if I'd had this list, he would have bought this. He would have bought the gold option. And I said, what would you have priced it at? She said, he would have paid $15,000 for it. And these are for features that, ordinarily we might even give away, or we might not, we might not charge for. So it's just thinking, what can we add to our proposition?
Not only would you likely give them away, but many of those, because I've done that part. So I have a tiny fraction of our revenue is doing consulting for physicians and high wage earners who are thinking about making a disability claim under a contract, for which I am an uber expert on this. And we did exactly this exercise. I had never met you, but we did exactly this exercise. Is what could we throw into the deal as an offering to even to enhance how the offering looks, like the contract looks, because we know that no other lawyer in our space is even thinking about a bullet point list of everything you can get. And the reality is that hardly anybody actually asks you to fulfill on every single bullet point. The showing up at the meeting. In our case, we can get the Zoom meeting transcribed and edited for you. And, so you have all this record. Like, it's there. Nobody ever asks for it. And so for what I was charging, basically $600 to do before I figured this out, I charged $2,000 to do. The client is really well served. They're happy. And we have two tiers because I have a younger associate. And if your problem is a smaller problem, you get to talk to him, but he's getting paid 3x what he was getting paid before for the same consult, because we actually sat down and did this exercise. And I'll tell you, you're exactly right, because when you do this, it's a differentiator, because it's very hard for anyone else to, like, anyone can take and steal and say, I'll do less per hour, right? Hardly anyone even knows what your features list is because they're not actually seeing the contract. And then we teach the consumer who's buying the contract, hey, just ask the other lawyers if we're competing with anyone, ask them if they do these things. And they're not, because they've never thought about that. Yeah. So I think that you're exactly right. And in any type of practice area, I have to imagine that if you sat down with your team for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, your team will actually come up with the ideas, because they're the ones that are on the phone calls and most of the emails anyway, of what it is that a client or potential client in this position would actually like to get from the firm. And side tip, it's not all about how many hours Ben spends on it. I built a great team that actually delivers most of what we're selling.
Yeah.
Talk about when another thing I hear sometimes is, oh, gee, Sean, if I do quote a fixed fee for a certain part of the case, and it ends up like, sure luck, the spouse on the other side and their lawyer come to agreement really quickly, and now I've made way too much. And someone is going to think that I have not been ethical because I just made multiple thousands of dollars per hour. And that happens in a contingent fee practice a lot, frankly. Have you seen do you get that pushback at all from lawyers who have low self-confidence and low self-esteem?
The usual pushback I get is, Sean, what do we do if we give a fixed price of £10,000 and then when we do the work, it's 12,000? We've got 12,000 on the clock. And the answer to that is you suck it up. You actually look at why did it end up at that? Were you keeping the client informed? Had you scoped it saying we're going to do 3 witness statements and then you did 10 witness statements without stopping work and going to the client and say, look, you remember I scoped this at 3. We now need 10. I will do the other 7 for you, but that's going to cost you a bit more, because lawyers will carry on working. We don't want to have that difficult conversation. We'll carry on working until the end. And then sometime we have to have the conversation, and it's much better to do that before you've done the work rather than after you've done the work, because you lose your leverage. And then the other thing I can tell you that I saw in your trade press, it was Descharts, I think is how you pronounce it, the firm, £2,500 an hour. It hit our legal press last week. I can tell you, I charge that per hour, if you broke it down in an hourly rate, 2.5 years ago. And that was not because I said to the client, it is £2,500 an hour. It wasn't. It was a client rang on a Friday afternoon at 4:30, and he needed a letter before action to go to somebody who had posted something defamatory on a community web Facebook page. And he was saying, Sean, I need you to do this. Now the time has ticked around. I satisfied myself we didn't have a conflict of interest. I'm at 20 to 5. He says, I need this to go by 5. Now, we had done a similar letter the week before. I knew where the precedent was. I had a trainee lawyer sitting next to me that I'm making sit down because you're going to be doing this. And I said to the client, yeah, I can do this for you. It's going to cost you £600 plus VAT. I need to take the payment now. He said, perfect, I'll do it. Put him through to my accounts people. They took payment. I said, by the time you come back here, we'll have the draft in front of us. We'll just fill it in. We did that. It came back. We've got the draft in front of us. We filled it in. Said, are you happy with this response? He said, yeah, lovely. Send it. Bush. Now, we did that in 18 minutes. £600 I charged him. So, hello there. I'm £2,400. So, yeah, I'm £1,800. I know on that one. I'm £1,800. I think that I worked it out in dollars. I think it's just under $2,400 for that. If it was an hourly rate, that guy was over the moon. He still keeps in touch with me, even though he knows I retired from private practice, because he said, Sean, I have a problem. Who can you help me with? Who can you direct me to? Because I'm his trusted advisor. Now, but I never told him what the hourly rate was. If he's,
of course not.
Yeah. Well, it was academic. It was a fixed price.
And that's capitalism 101, because in that deal, everybody won. He got his problem solved that he needed solved that day. You could have said, no, look, I'm going to play golf or something. There's no price at which I will do the work, but there is probably some price that would keep you off the golf course if you're a golfer. So you won. The young'un who was working with you, the young lawyer there who was working with you, won because now he or she has seen something that they didn't teach in law school, right? And there's no force of fraud. Look, I think that the big point that we're making here is that the client still gets to choose, right? The client gets to choose the options. And one of the options might be no, like I'll go to the next lawyer. And that's fine. When you have good marketing and a good reputation and a good brand and cases are coming in, you absolutely can do this. I want to talk a few minutes about ditch the billable hour. You have right near the beginning of the book, you have I thought it was a misprint first. It says your 8P point plan with a penguin in the middle of it. And so let's talk about that, because you're not just about, your expertise is not just, well, let's just change the model to flat fee, right? You really want to change the way that lawyers think about their businesses.
Yeah. And, as I said at the beginning, I'm forever grateful to John Cotter of Harvard Business School writing Our Iceberg is Melting, because the 8P point plan is based on his methodology of change management. And if you're going to implement value-based pricing in your firm, it's a change management project. It's not an email that comes out from the managing partner to the staff in a Jean-Luc Picard syndrome of saying, make it so. It's not a half-day course at the partner's retreat. This is, what is the project, what is the plan, and how can we do it? And so, the 8 Ps are, for the first one is P for paradigm. It's a paradigm shift. We've got to agree we're going to do this. This is strategic. We as a firm are going to do this. Second P, pioneers. Let's get a pioneer group of penguins that are going to be really enthusiastic about this. We don't want our no-no penguins in. We need our pioneer penguins, the ones who are going to embrace this and give it a go. We're then going to have a plan, and we're going to plan properly for this. So we have a plan and a vision. We're then going to promote and communicate this across our firm so everybody knows this is what we're doing and how we're going to do it. We're then going to permit people to get it wrong and try.
Yes.
Because lawyers are bad at blame. And they sometimes want heads on sticks when, oh, look what happened over there. That's a mistake. Hang on. We've got to create a psychologically safe area for these people to do this. This is not career limiting if you try this. If that lawyer who had done the 2,000, 5,000, 8,000 hadn't got any of the jobs, the client just said, well, I think I'm unhappy about your structure, I'm going. That cannot be a career limiting exercise because that guy was brave enough to give it a go. We then have got to look for quick wins, prizes, and celebrate those quick wins, because everyone wants to be part of the winning team. And then, like any change management project, we're going to persevere. We've got to keep going when the tough times. And then we're going to have passion. That's the last P, of the passion of creating this culture change and having our people, as you described it at the very beginning, coming into work on a Monday and, do you know what? being happy about coming into work on a Monday. Because I'm a great believer in that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. You love what you do. So let's just go in there and enjoy being around people that we're comfortable about being. Let's enjoy acting for clients that are a joy to act for. Let's make some money, play our golf, do whatever it is that floats our boat, but we can have happier lives out of doing that.
Around here, so I'm in practice with my son, and we oftentimes reflect, we call it being able to play in the endless playground. And, the picture you draw is back when you were a little kid and you didn't really have any worries, and you played in the playground and you took risks and you got in rumbles and you skinned your knees. But then, the next day, everything started again anew. Like if you're playing sports and, the whole thing ends up in a fight, the next day, everything starts anew. And, it's just weird, actually, Sean, that so many lawyers feel either they can't change, don't want to take risk, don't want to be the pioneer, don't want people to talk about them funny or talk about them behind their back. I don't know how you get through law school and get into the practice with such low self-esteem and low creativity, but I guess that's what law school builds in large part or attracts, I think, people with not a lot of creativity. So tell us a little bit about your own business model. You have this book, you have a group that you've put together, and I want you to talk about that. But today, like, how do you speak around the world, how do you make money, and who are you looking for as clients?
Well, I'm looking for what I call proactive lawyers. I like working with proactive lawyers. I don't want to work with a group of no penguins who will be saying, oh, no, that can't be done. So I want people that have got open minds. I work with people in a number of ways. I have firms that will say, come in and do this for me, Sean. I will have firms that say, come and do this with me. And I will have other firms say, just tell us what to do. We'll do it ourselves. And the book came around because people kept saying, look, how do we do this? And I remember seeing one white paper that a AI company put together, actually, where they surveyed 8 lawyers from around the world. 6 said, we hate the billable hour. 1 said, I quite like it. And 1 was a bit nonplussed neither way. And the 6 that said they hate it said, we all hate it, but it's too difficult to do anything about it. And that was red rag to a bull for me, I'm afraid. And I just thought, look, I've studied it. I've read everything that there is to read, I think, about value-based pricing. Although when I heard your podcast the other day with Marco Brown, I thought, I hadn't heard that before. Anyway, but and you keep learning and you keep developing. And in the back of the book, I've got a 125-point task list. If someone says, how do you do it? Well, there's your starting point. Look at the task list. That'll tell you what to do. First task on the task list is, could you buy John Cotter's book, Our Iceberg is Melting? I think John Cotter owes me a beer whenever I bump into him, if I ever do. But, I want to work with firms. I do it also on a web-based basis. So I'm a great fan of technology called Remo, R-E-M-O, where you can have virtual conferences. And I'm doing one of those on the 12th of March where people come into a virtual conference room, and I get them on tables working together. So lawyers all over the world, all the commercial lawyers sit on table 1, all the family lawyers on table 2, and they will work together creating options, because there will be people who say, oh, can't be done in my work area. Well, I guarantee you at the end, once you sat with one of my table captains in that conference, you will have come up, or you will have at least heard other people come up with options that they can apply in their business. And the thing about lawyers is, and I had this chat with Marco Brown, actually, thanks to you, most lawyers won't do anything. And that gives you a real competitive advantage, because even if people are told this is something that you should do, they might go back to do what they've always done, and they'll get what they've always got. And those lawyers who are actually prepared to do something and get themselves in gear are going to reap the rewards. And so that's what I think is very exciting about this. And I know what you do.
I mean, and even if more lawyers did what you and I are showing them to do, and all of your competitors did this, we still believe that the world is big, that there's more clients and more legal problems to solve than there are lawyers, even though if you kind of read the popular press, you think there's way too many lawyers. From where we sit, people need good, smart lawyers who are creative and proactive, and really asking the questions that you said at the top of the podcast, which is, what is a win for you? What would be perfect for you, Mr. Potential Client? What are you really trying to achieve here? And it's a question that way too many lawyers skip over, I think. Let me ask you one last little section, because a lot of firms, like, a main way to evaluate younger lawyers in their teams, their associates, is number of hours you build. And so in speaking to leaders of law firms who have maybe legions of young lawyers who, yesterday were being evaluated in large part on how many hours they build, what do you say to those leaders who are like, all right, well, how are we going to measure them?
Why don't we just measure them on revenue generated? Because hours billed doesn't necessarily always turn into revenue anyway. It is just hours that are billed. And I've stood in front of law firm group where we had law firm CFOs of £40 million turnover and above, up to 100 million turnover. And I said to them, I suspect that you as a firm routinely write off between 10 and 20% of your turnover every year. And they nodded. Yes, we are writing off between 10 and 20 million a year. So all this time that gets booked that doesn't turn into fees. So it's pointless. It really is pointless. Measure them on revenue. And, I think that the billable hour is guilty of sex discrimination because, women might be carers. They might have children. They're going to take more of the caring responsibilities. And it's harder. And I just think it is just so wrong. And what is the point? I'm 36 years post-qualified. I've never had to work an all-nighter in my life. What is all that about in the commercial section? Why do they do that? I think that is poor time management. And I used to make it a disciplinary proceedings in my firm. If a lawyer missed a child's sports day or a child's nativity play, that for me was disciplinary. I had to sit through all of my kids' ones of those. Every lawyer should, and that's the kind of environment we want to make. But we just got to give the big P is to permit our people to act differently, permit our people to say, this client is too difficult to deal with. We don't want to act for them. And another thing I have in the book is something called a lawyer scoring matrix, where if you were coming to me as a lawyer and no one prices their own work in isolation. So I had this situation with a probate lawyer. The probate Excel spreadsheet said the value of this case is £6,000. And I said to her, how busy are you? She said, oh, Sean, I'm absolutely maxed. Okay, we're going to charge more. Can you delegate it? No, I can't delegate it. I said, come on, you can delegate this. It's only a small case. You've got a team of 8. Why can't you delegate this? She said, I can't delegate this probate, Sean, because I've just left 3 siblings in my office. They are all arguing over their late mother's jewelry. Who gets the engagement ring? Who gets the watch? They don't like each other. I'm going to have 3 conversations every time on this probate going forward. And Mum hasn't even been buried yet. She said, I can't delegate this to a junior lawyer. I said, okay, I accept that. I said, are you going to enjoy dealing with these people? She said, hell no, I'm really not. This is going to be horrible. I said, okay. I said, what price would you like to do this work at? And she said, £24,000. I said, fine, price approved. She went away, asked for £24,000. Next day, she gets an email, price agreed. How does she feel now about doing the work? But she's quite happy, and it's that kind of thing.
She's really happy.
And it's that kind of thing where we create these structures and frameworks for our people, and we say it's okay to play in that, but we don't have them. And that's what I want to create, and that's what I think everybody should create.
You and I are on the same page, because if we were creating a legal system and a way for clients and lawyers to deal with each other, if we were creating it from scratch, like this was the assigned task, there's no way we would build what has been built over the years. All right, my friends, where should people go? So the book is Ditch the Billable Hour, which I assume is also available on Amazon.com here in America, as my referee book is apparently available on Amazon.uk, even though I don't send physical copies there. But besides getting the book, where should people go to find out more about you, perhaps engage you, see what else you're doing?
Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn junkie. I really enjoy it. I put lots on there, and that's really the best place to get me. Or if you Google bigyellowpenguin.co.uk, I will come up. And anyone, all your listeners, Ben, are heartily invited to join me in what I call the VBP colony, which you can access via my website. And it's an online community with, I launched it 5 days ago. There's 100 people already in it. And they're all interested in the same thing, which is ditching the billable hour. And there's resources in there. People are exchanging ideas already. And I haven't got all the answers. And answers will come from within. And I want these people, I want to start conversations. I want people to start sharing information. And, you know, I got already a great book recommendation from somebody in there, from someone I've never met. But he looked at a YouTube clip, a TED talk that I'd put up, said, I think this is really good. And he said, you want to see this one as well. And he thought, happy days. That's all we do. Just keep learning. You know, let's keep learning.
Absolutely. And you ended there with a great principles that leaders do not need to know all of the answers to all of the questions. I think our job is to assemble great people and get out of the way. Assemble people who are smarter than we are and get out of their way and let them do the thing. Sean Jardine, thanks so much for carving out the time today. Really appreciate it. Ditch the Billable Hour is a great book. I did a read of the pre-publication copy. It's fantastic. And congrats. I think your community is going to grow too, because there's a huge need.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, sir. We'll talk later.
If you like what you just heard on the Renegade Lawyer podcast, you may be a perfect fit for the great legal marketing community. Law firm owners across the country are becoming heroes to their families and icons in their communities. They've gone renegade by rejecting the status quo of the legal profession so they can deliver high-quality legal services coupled with top-notch customer service to clients who pay, stay, and refer. Learn more at greatlegalmarketing.com. That's greatlegalmarketing.com.